Yeah, I think we have you now. So Leo O'Connor, the Offaly under-20 manager. How are things with you, Leo?
Not too bad, Shane. How are you?
Not so bad. Michael, well, I suppose, Joe, we'll talk about the Tipperary and Limerick game with you. What was your thoughts on it? Finished up 25 points apiece. Bit of a cracker.
Absolutely. It was one of those ones where it took on a life of its own, I suppose, really. I thought Limerick were chasing the game all day yesterday. That was my, when you were looking at it, I just thought there was a little bit of ring rustiness, I thought. Mistakes being made, balls being dropped that normally they stick, and they really rigidly stick to the process. I thought Tip really got into their rhythm very, very early in the game, and they really pushed on a little bit. Limerick were chasing it right up to half time. That 10-minute period, I suppose, after half time, where Limerick really went out and began to express themselves, and you thought they're going to click on from here. That didn't really happen, in that Limerick gave away a very, very soft free, and allowed Tip back into the game. That settled Tip's nerves, and it went on from there. And it was tit for tat, I suppose, from that. Limerick shot option, I think, when John sits down this morning or last night and analyses the whole situation, Limerick shot option yesterday, I thought, was rather poor. And yet, when they got one or two chances, which I suppose in the last 6 or 7 minutes, when they could have gone for the juggler and gone for goal chances, they were happy to take points, and they missed one or two chances. Certainly Garrod's one when he went through. I think that was one of the most important. When you look back in it, that was one of the most important incidents in the game, where he probably should have put the ball over the bar. Garrod being Garrod, he went for it. Some days to come off, and not saying he's wrong. Some days to come off, and other days it happens. What happened yesterday, but certainly I think yesterday was one of the ones where you should put the ball over the bar and have kept that scoreboard ticking over for Limerick, particularly when he was after getting into such an open space. There were still two Tipperary players between him and a goalkeeper. And I just think that, small little things like that in games which are so tight. And if you look at it coming down the home straight, a point lead yesterday coming down the home straight was a big lead.
And like even late on, Graham Mulcahy, who was brilliant when he came on, he had a chance to slip in Peter Casey for a goal.
Yeah, that's like, I don't want to be referring to, but like that was one opportunity where Graham just stepped back inside. Casey was inside. If you look at it, Casey puts his hands up and he said, but Graham's influence on the game yesterday, he came on against Clare, didn't have a great influence in the game against Clare, but certainly when he came on yesterday, I think his experience and his wisdom and his know how to get into positions, I think, was very, very important for a Limerick attack yesterday.
Do you know what, like, the big thing for me in the last number of games has been the third quarter rush, where Limerick have just steamrolled Tipperary. So there was like the 16-point turnaround in the 2021 game. It was like 110 to 2-point rush there in the league semi-final recently. Like when I went back over the stats that I was doing for this match, there was a period between the 40th and 55th minute where Limerick had 11 scoring chances and got just 1 point from it. So Tipperary, like, there was still that third quarter rush, but Tipperary found a way to keep with them, because they forced them into, like, there was 3 block shots, there was 2 balls that were dropped short, so that's generally under pressure, 5 wides. So I think Tipperary found a way, plus Tipperary won that period 4 points to 1, Michael. So that was like, I think that was key to Limerick not continuing the same pattern.
Yeah, well, it looked like the game had turned completely a couple of minutes after the break. What were we in? We were 39 minutes in, and Limerick they went in 3 down. They were 1 up, and you're just thinking they'll tag on. And Tip managed to get back into it. Just you mentioned there, I've never seen as many blocks in a game, lads, in a modern game. Like, geez, the amount of blocking Tip got in. There must have been 6 or 7. Like, really, Leo, I'm sure you're always kind of coaching as well. There was always an active hurl. There was always a hurl somewhere between, the ball and the goals. There was a brilliant one. Even Barry Nash got hooked in the first half, going for a shot. He got blocked as well. Noel McGrath, I think, got the block on him. They were just phenomenal like that. The pressure that they were putting on, as you said there, Shane, they were putting pressure on the shots. There was no easy shots, apart from maybe Garrod's, chance there. I don't even know if he was going for a goal or whether he mishit it or not. But you said about scoring chance there. After 64 minutes, Tip had converted 21 of 29, whereas Limerick had converted 21 of 39. And Leo, as you said there, when they look back at that, their scoring efficiency just still isn't where they'd like it to be.
I just think, Michael, I don't think Limerick are where they want to be either. On a broader scale of the whole situation, I don't think they are where they really have flowed this year in Championship. Certainly, National Hurling League looked absolutely superb in the National Hurling League. A lot of things went right from, but it hasn't that flow. Limerick normally timed the season right, and it really hasn't stepped up this year. Personally, myself, I think there's a lot of miles on the clock, even though they're still a young bunch of players. If you look at the amount of hurling over the last 5 years that they've played, compared to other counties, Limerick might have played 23, 24, 25 games over the last 6 years. But that's due to success that they've had. But I just think that game time, that amount of mental tiredness that's there at the moment, that I would put it down to. I think physically they're fine. I thought yesterday they finished the game really, really well. I thought Tip, even though Tip have much improved this year and are a different team, to be quite honest, I think the introduction of new players, the Brian O'Mara's, the Garrod O'Connors to this world, they've brought a new lease of life to a Tip team that were found wanting last year, to be quite honest. And in terms of that, I just think that Limerick's, even though, like as I said, that energy that Tip have brought, I thought that Limerick were that little bit fitter yesterday, coming down the home straight. It looked like, Tip went a point ahead, but yet Limerick had the ability to come back and still go a point ahead. It was Tip was drawing the game. And I think that energy and that bit of experience, and I thought that threat that Limerick played with in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game yesterday, I think there was a sudden realization that, oh God, if this goes wrong, if we're caught here, we're in big trouble, and I think that's what really got Limerick over the line. And I think that energy kicked in. I thought Kyle Hayes was absolutely superb yesterday in the second half, but yet didn't go on one of those marauding runs up the field. I just think that, I think in the past, in the national 2 years in particular, Limerick have thrown caution to the wind. If you look at the All-Ireland against Cork, if you look at Kilkenny last year, like if you look at the Tip match situation, where they really threw the shackles off themselves and said, look, this is it, we're going for it. And I don't think that has happened this year. It's going to be a very, very I think next weekend's game against Cork, I think, is going to be one for the ages, because I think Cork's youth and enthusiasm, what they're bringing to it, and what Limerick are going to have to, in front of their own home support, oh my God, it's going to be some occasion. And I just think I think the last 4 or 5 minutes yesterday, the realization that this could go belly up for us, I think is going to have a major effect on the Limerick team going into next weekend.
There was some great matchups, wasn't there, Leo? Like Alan Tynan was obviously detailed on Kyle Hayes, and he emptied himself, and I'm sure he did the job that Cahill was asking, even though he didn't. I can't even remember him having the ball in his hand.
No, I don't remember that either. No.
Yeah, but he's still important for Tip, but it was very different to his Cork performance. Michael Breen on Gillan, I thought was good. Like Gillan probably wasn't fed enough, but I thought Breen did well. When the opportunity was there to hold him up or whatever, there's times you just have to accept he's going to score a point. Jake Morris, I thought, gave an exhibition for Tip. Like Keane Lynch and Grode Hegarty, can they change mid-flow and get back to their old hurler of the year selves? But back to the matchups, Leo, was there any matchups that really kind of got you going?
I'll be honest with you, just after referring when I thought Michael Breen and Aaron Gillan was very interesting matchup. There was the first ball that went in yesterday, if you look at it, it was played diagonally across the field. It was perfect for Aaron to come out onto turned and pop the ball over the bar. Maybe, as you said, the ball wasn't fed that way yesterday, but I think that was due to further out the field. I think that was the tip, that middle third of the field that everyone begins to talk about now. I think that space, that hooking, that blocking that we've earlier referred to, there was hurleys in everywhere, and it was just the whole pace and the intensity thing. I in the past I have seen Tip, but of this current team, I haven't seen Tip play with an intensity that they played with against Limerick yesterday. I thought technically the hooking, the blocking, their work rate, it was absolutely superb yesterday, and that's something that was missing last year out of Tip, and they've reintroduced it this year. Seamus Kennedy, these guys, they all stood up yesterday. And as I said, the Alan Tynan situation, Alan looked an absolutely brilliant hurler. I remember Alan in 2015, the minor final playing centre forward for Tip, and he was a different type hurler completely to the hurler I saw yesterday. Almost tip mirror imaged Alan yesterday for what David Fitzgerald did to Kyle as well. You know, and that David Fitzgerald held up Kyle outside in the Gaelic grounds against Clare, and literally Alan sacrificed himself yesterday and stopped Garrod, because I think Limerick also looked at the threat that Alan Tyne had clipped over 3 or 4 points against Cork. And, you know, that's something that was a threat that they knew Kyle had to do a job as well. But as I said, I just don't think that Limerick have thrown the shackles off themselves this year. The matchups overall, one of the things that for me was when I saw in the second half, and it was very early second half, I just saw when Noel went in centre forward and Declan Hannon, two very, very similar type players. And I went, oh my God, this is going to be interesting. But it never really developed because, as we say already, the middle third, I would always watch Noel McGrath because Noel he's telepathic. You know, he can find that space. Like Peter, he's a Peter Casey type player. They're all the same type players where they find the space, and they always seem to have that extra second. You don't put them down as being the quickest guys in the world, but yet they work their way into a space where they always have that 3 or 4 yards, and they seem to have loads of time to pop the ball over the bar.
Dan McCormack, Shane, on Garage yesterday was brilliant for me. And I really loved what Limerick did, and it didn't work out. But they put Garrod Hegarty into the full forward line and tried to make it really awkward for Dan McCormack, who's never played anywhere near the full back line in his whole career, I'd say. And he still was brilliant, and he was still charging out with balls. That was one, I think, I have to say, like, Cattle really went after certain matchups, and you'd have to say he got it spot on. I think this was a game where Tipperary probably came of age, to be honest with you, and the fact that they were the ones, they'd had the lead for the vast majority of the game, they were the ones that came back and forced the draw rather than the other way around. And you look at, like, Conor Stapleton, another lad who just emptied himself, was carried off. There was some amount of new personnel. Johnny Ryan came in near the end. Sean Ryan came in. John McGrath was on the field 90 seconds and had to hit the draw, like a leveling free, a debatable enough free now in my view. As John Kiley said after, if you're a point up, you don't get those frees, but when you're a point down, maybe you're more likely to get them. But just to do that, even only been 90 seconds on the pitch, like, if you look at all the personnel that Tip are missing since last year, and you look at the performance that they produced yesterday, I'd have to say, from your own point of view and from a Tip point of view, you'd have to say it's hugely heartening. They got some amount right yesterday. And one player we haven't mentioned is Richter Scale, who was just dictating affairs from the goals.
Yeah, like I read into Redzer O'Grady beforehand, and he was saying he's before the match, and he was saying he's a player that's really confident in himself. You know, he could do anything, but very confident player. And you can see the way he played. He really commanded the square, I felt. I just wonder though, with Limerick, sorry, first of all, Tipperary are missing players like Jason Ford, Barry Heffernan, Craig Horgan, Paddy Cadell, and Jared Brown. If you threw them all in, maybe there's someone else missing that would be huge in terms of, like, if you could get 1 or 2 of them back, even next year. Maybe it won't happen this year. But I was going to say, Leo, that Cathal O'Neill, his performance is absolutely outstanding. Like, we've all known he's a great talent, but this was possibly the day where he truly announced himself as a senior star.
Absolutely. Before you go talk about Cathal O'Neill, Shane, I turn around and say something to you. Shawnee Ryan Rogers, right, Temple Derry, right, came on yesterday. My thinking yesterday on the situation with Shawnee Ryan was, if Shawnee had come on earlier in the game, because he sits really deep inside in the full forward line and he's a goal scorer, it would have forced Limerick back up the field that little bit further. You know, and Limerick would have had to come back and had to tie down 3 across the back, 3 across that full back line. And I just thought yesterday, I was thinking, like, if you were Liam Cahill, what would you do? And it was just one of the things that came into my head. And I know, like, I've seen him playing hurling with Temple Derry there, and, like, he really sits deep inside in the full forward line around that 14-yard line. And if you had brought him in, you'd been pushing Limerick back towards the wrong goals and creating further space for like, Conor Stapleton absolutely emptied the tank, But it was just interesting. The Cathal O'Neill situation. Look, Cathal has been a talent. I worked with Cathal when he was 16 years of age. He's just one of those guys that lives, sleeps, eats, drinks hurling. He's probably one of his own biggest critics, in that he measures everything. He look at all his stats, and he's just a good kid. He went out yesterday, hurled with a little bit of abandonment, got on a lot of ball over around that 65-yard line, and that's what he did, was those 4 or 5 points yesterday. That's his ability, you know. At times, he can be conceived as being a little bit lazy, but he's up that. He literally has served his apprenticeship over the last 2 years with Limerick, and he has really learned, like, have a situation where there's a lot of competition. Like, Cian isn't setting the world on fire at the moment, and that's something that Cian will go in and examine himself. Garrod, I just think, all the rumours going around all week about him, I think that mentally affected him yesterday. And I think Garrod is more disappointed in himself than anyone else, that he has it has got to the situation. He kind of knows he's going through a bad run of form. And I think this is the first time in Garrod's career that he's lacking a little bit of drive, and he's trying to work out the initiatives himself, what he's to do to get back up. And I think he's probably been overcritical of himself. But like, when you have a person then like Cahill, which he does, Cahill works hard. His first touch is very, very good. Pace-wise, he's up to the level. Not the most. He's not going to set the world on fire. He's not going to be your 100-meter champion. But it's his work rate, and he gets onto the ball and does what I call those diagonal runs that he's making across the middle of the field. Like, he's coming short and he can take it off Declan, and he's popping the ball over the bar off Declan. Maybe further down the line you could find him midfield. I think for a Limerick senior hurling, maybe next year or the year after. Because certainly, as things go on, when they'll need to change it up, there's as I said, there's a lot of miles on the clock already. But he's just been a superb talent.
It would take a brave man to leave Hegarty and Cian Lynch on the bench. Like, they're both brilliant players. Like, and when they're on form, there's few as good as them, but they're not playing well. Peter Casey, it's surprising to ever see him on the bench. Do you think John Kiley will go and just maybe use the two of them as substitutes, Lee, or would it take a very brave man?
I'm going to say something, Shane. I won't be the most popular guy in the world for saying this. I think last year, with Cian being out injured last year, when you're out injured off the pace of an inter-county hurler, you and Cian worked through the whole thing through. I think Cian got a little bit muscle bound. I think he's put up a few pounds, and it's not in terms of weight; it's in terms of strength. I think he's put up a little bit too much muscle, right? And I think he's lost that half yard of pace this year. That dynamic runs that he was running always seemed to be able to get away from the man, and I think that is one of the things that they're going to have to look at with Cian. I think maybe less would be more at this time of the year. For him at the moment, in terms of, it just doesn't seem to be sticking. That magical touch, those, all those flicks and stuff that created space for him, I don't think that has happened. And I just think that being out of the game literally for 12 months, as he was last year with that injury, bar playing the first or second round last year when he tore the hamstring badly. So from that point of view, I just think that that's one of the things that Limerick are going to have to look at. I think the freshness is not there with Cian and Garrod at the moment. And I know John being John, I think John will make those hard decisions. And I think that it's not something that they'll shy away from. But certainly it'll all go down to training, recuperation today and tomorrow. Probably go at it again, maybe tomorrow night, and then take it from there and see where the lie of the land is, because they can shake it up. There's a lad there, I think a lot of that's on the Limerick panel is Aidan O'Connor. I think Aidan will offer Limerick a lot in the future. Maybe is it now the time to throw him in there? I think his work rate needs to be up a little bit, but certainly they have options. The Cahill O'Neill factor, as we mentioned already, is another thing. They have the reliance on Cahill now that he can come in. And like, just look, 6 to 1, half a dozen other shit.
Do you think, Leo, that Cian has ran 100? Like, I don't see him running at 100%. I don't see him taking on a man. If you get me now, he kind of sitting back or he's drinking. Like, he got blocked down yesterday, standing up hitting a shot, which you'd never see.
He took his point that time when there was space to turn and go and make something happen, which he normally would. Yeah,
it was just it just doesn't look himself. I don't know if I've seen him like running at 100%, making a 65-yard dash, or do you know what I mean? He just looks like his maybe his agility or his speed has been kind of stifled a small bit.
Yeah, as the dynamic of a centre forward, I think it's so from that point of view, I just think the dynamic of being maybe Michael and I, maybe it's a time to drop him back midfield again. You know, that is one of the things that if he goes back midfield, I think that the energy and that consistency that he brings out around the middle of the park, because he lays off a great ball. He has that natural ability to pick out a man, and he has that natural ability to go back and help out in front of Declan as well. You know, so that point of view, I just think it may be something that you might see next weekend. That you know, you've Garrod as well. Like Garrod is, I think for me, it's a mental thing. You know, because the rumor mill that went around last week. Look, it's the GA. We can't stop these things. These things are always said, and you know, people are not invincible. And I think it got to him a little bit yesterday. And overall, I think the Limerick half forward line yesterday will be disappointed, other than the bright spark that was Cathal O'Neill. Like if you look back at the All Ireland final last year, the scores that came from that half forward line. If you look back from the Cork All Ireland final, the scores that came from that half forward line, scores that came out of it yesterday were very, very limited. It was Cathal O'Neill, and that's one of the major factors.
I'm just going to bring up the Munster table here for a second, and if you look at Limerick, total points scored 72. Obviously, Waterford are, you know, languishing behind everyone else at the moment, but 72. When you look at, albeit Clare have played their 4 games, 115, Tipperary 93, 85. Like, they are struggling, Michael. Like, are you, this week, if you're Kinnerk and Kiley, are you worried?
Oh, you definitely would be a little bit worried anyway, wouldn't you? Like, John Kiley's kind of saying after yesterday that they're incrementally improving. They probably were a bit better yesterday, maybe, than they had been in the previous 2 games. But like, compared to their previous standards, it's still probably well off. And just looking at that table as well, like a draw will do Cork as well next Sunday because they have better score difference. So, like, I know Leo teed it up there, like, Jesus, Sunday is going to be an absolute cracker. Like, Cork have the chance. Again, Limerick have, much like Tip, as I said, coming into the game yesterday, Limerick have inflicted a fair bit of misery on Cork. Only 2 years ago, they gave them an absolute battering in an All-Ireland final. Here's a glorious chance to right all those wrongs and knock them out of the championship. But the Limerick kind of have that sense of, and I said it to you on Thursday's show, that veteran boxer that is kind of leaning back on the ropes and is under a bit of pressure. There could be still a few big punches left in him, but definitely maybe looks like he's kind of nearly waiting for somebody to take him out of his misery. Now, that might not be the case, and they could get a victory over Cork, and they could go on a run through the preliminary quarter-final and into the All-Ireland quarter-finals, but they're going to have to go over Sunday first, and that is anything but a given.
Yeah, Tom Morrissey then, you know, let's talk about some of the positives for Limerick. Tom Morrissey, Diarmaid Byrnes, in the second half did some really good things. Dan Morrissey, like there are some players that really stood up, Leo.
They are, absolutely, Shane. And look, it's not a case that Limerick are shying away from anything. I think the half-back line yesterday, look, definitely Sean Finn was a major loss to Limerick yesterday inside in that cornerback. That astuteness, that just that confidence that he brings back there. And Mike Casey had a good game yesterday in terms that he was very, very consistent. But this might sound being arrogant, but you know, when you're throwing a ball out as a short puck out to Shawnee Finn, you know rigidly where he wants to go. You know that he has 2 or 3 options. He has this in his head. I think it was new yesterday to Mike Casey playing cornerback, and I think the movement to the tip full forward line yesterday was very, very impressive as well. And like, I think that over the last number of years, if you look the influence of Jake Morris had against the Limerick team, I think Balone Park Keefe 2 years ago, he got a goal. But I think he's been literally nullified by Limerick full back line in the past. And I think his influence yesterday, he found space yesterday that normally would be closed down by Sean Finn. And that's one of the things. The positives, though, is that the whole half back line, Diarmaid Byrnes, Declan, Kyle Hayes yesterday, when it was really in the melting pot, all 3 stood up to the mark. All around the middle of the field, like as you said, Tom Morrissey has been, to me, Mr. Consistent for Limerick. You know when he gets on the ball that this guy is creating space. Everyone says it doesn't look the fastest guy in the world. I'd love to see his GPS reports because absolutely, I'd say they're off the Richter scale. They must be up around the 12K mark, to be quite honest, because he's just constantly working, but he has that natural hurling ability as well, where anything within 70, 80 yards of goals, you know when he turns, he's going for it. and he'll just get that yard of space and pops the ball over the bar. I think there's been yesterday, and I think there's been an over reliance on Tom a little bit, even against Clare as well. I think, and that's one of the things that really, that when John sits down in the call light today and looks at this, like this year, normally Limerick are coasting and deciding, do we play a Munster final? For the last 2 years, we'll qualify for the Munster final, we'll go the direct route. Now it's down to Limerick getting into preliminary quarter final. This is new to Limerick. And as I said, it's from here on in for them, it's completely knockout hurling now. It's a different lie of the land. Normally we're qualified at this stage of the year and we're looking to know which route we're going to take. And like you can look at all the positives of it, and I just think next weekend match is just going to be gone. It's off the Richter scale. It's going to be mental, all right? And it's Cork are coming up with a freshness, with a bone, with a paw, with a torn stuck in their paw, going, "You're not going to do this again. You're not going to do this again." Pat Ryan, it's his first time facing Limerick in Championship. Like, there's so many pluses here for Cork. And I turn around and say this much, before it ever even happens, the Cork bench next week, next Sunday, is going to be huge, right? What they're bringing to it. And like, we can look at our positives, we can look at our consistencies with Limerick, but ultimately is really going to boil down to work rate, who wants it, and as you said, are we on the ropes? Are we going to throw the final punch that will get us out of trouble? It really is in the melting pot. It's something it's going to be a unique occasion. And like, I know we can talk about, yesterday was brilliant, 38,000. Like, we've had them in the past. My God, Limerick are on the ropes next weekend against Cork, and Cork are chomping at the bit. Went to down to Ennis and got a really good result. In terms of, they put up a performance, just pipped. Where they gone? They were the 4.5 points down at one stage. Yeah, and still came out of it, and like, I know they were pipped, but it was down to one or tiredness more than anything else, emptying the tank. And Cork, even though they were beaten, are probably in a very, very strong position coming to Limerick with nothing to lose, everything to gain.
Can I just ask you, Leo, hypothetically, and I know it's hypothetical, just say Limerick get over next weekend, like, is that preliminary quarter final, All-Ireland quarter final, All-Ireland semi-final, All-Ireland final, like, is that a route that they can actually negotiate this year, just given some of the injuries, given that the fatigue of that, a lot of their bigger players? It's not like 2018 where they're the young, fresh team coming in the back door. Like, if they do get through, that like, there's pitfalls everywhere. More games, more injuries, more fatigue, less freshness.
Like, the result in Wexford yesterday with a preliminary quarter final, like, Limerick can only take Limerick can only take their foot off their gas and maybe rest one or two players in a preliminary quarter final. They'll probably get over that, right? If they get the result, they'll probably get over that. And then what I would term, where in the past they've really come into their own, be it semi-finals, quarter-finals, semi-finals and finals. Limerick, when they seem to get to Croke Park, get an extra 20% out of themselves. They've got to get that extra 20%, in my opinion, 2 matches earlier this year.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's going, and as I initially referred at the very start of this, is that Limerick have an awful lot of hurling played over the last 5 years, since 2018. And I think that has been the major negative for Limerick. The miles on the clock, going to the well, and like, okay, this should be going for probably, bar the Kilkenny game, should be probably this year looking at 5 in a row. But in terms of everything, that miles on the clock, I just think that is the most important thing that Caroline Currid, Paul Kenner, John Kiley have got to get over. I think that they have to really work on that and say, we have the ability, we have the mental toughness, and more importantly, we have the aerobic fitness to go here. We go to the well again. We go in, like, we refer to them as boxing matches. You go in, they're going to another boxing match next Sunday, and it's do or die from. It's Championship hurling so early in the year for Limerick. I mean, like, it's not even May, not even in June yet, and Limerick are, they have to get in a performance.
And like there was a commenter there saying that, look, we're talking about as if it's all negative Limerick and all positive Tip. Tipperary did have to get a leveler at the end of the game. And it's not like, you're thinking that Tip will go on and win the All-Ireland now just because they drew with Limerick. But like, I have to say, I love that Liam Cahill, he made his 4 changes and that was it. Like, he's going to change the goalie. It worked out. He brought in Owen Connolly. I thought he did pretty well on Tom Morrissey, as good as you can do really against him. Obviously, the Mark Keogh change had to happen because Jason Ford was injured, but Keogh was brilliant again, I felt. And then the other change was, I can't remember what the other change was.
Bonner Matter came in, yeah, and they got 50 good minutes out of him.
Yeah, and especially because he'd had a tough league semi-final, I thought he did really well. And like Barry Nash is normally raiding up the field and, impacting the game going the other way, Leo. The one time he got up the field this time, he got hooked. So negating him, someone who's become so in vogue in terms of like, you nearly want to be the Barry Nash role now. But Tip found a way to shut that down.
They did, but one of the most interesting things I think that with Tip this year, Shane, is the fact that Brian O'Mara at centre back is a holding centre back. Tip haven't had a holding centre back since Conor O'Mahony left them, right? Retired a couple of years ago. That's steady an influence. I see the benefits of that, where like Barry Nash there wasn't the space to come up the middle yesterday. And plus the fact that I think teams are really pushing up with, say, on Limerick, playing 2 and 3 inside in the full forward line. Even Limerick's puck out strategies, Limerick didn't go short too many times yesterday. They weren't allowed to go short too many times because Tip were close enough to get there, to the short puck out if it happened. And Declan even, like if you Limerick teams over the last number of years, like how many times have we seen Declan coming into that little pocket between the 13-14 channel and come and take puck outs there, and Limerick have a puck out strategy as well where they go 4 across the 21-yard line, right? I think I saw it twice yesterday where Damer Burns can come in and take, when Sean Finn would go right out to the sideline, Damer Burns could come in and take the puck out there. That didn't happen. So it's a credit to Tip that they shut down that type of stuff. When they did put the 3-man full forward line aside on the Limerick puck out, it forced Nicky to go long. So there was loads of things. There was loads of tactical situations where Tip got right yesterday, and you've got to give Shane or Liam Cahill the credit for that, Shane.
Michael, do you think there's a lot of talk afterwards that Cahill Barrett being competent, and he had a great battle with Seamus Flanagan as well. I didn't think he did a whole pile wrong, I have to say, but there's some people saying that he went and pulled the face guard under a high ball. Now he definitely did connect with the face guard. Whether it's a red card, I don't think so, but because it didn't seem intentional to me. It's just one of those things, you're holding your man off and he pulls the face guard.
Yeah, I only got to watch it back this morning just before the show, and I'm glad kind of was watching it by myself in quiet, and you're just looking at it and you're not listening to any hoo-ha or anything like that. I didn't see a huge amount in it, being honest with you. I thought he had his hand up around here and might have came down, but I don't think he was necessarily pulling his face guard. I don't know, that's the type of player Barrett is. He plays right on that edge. You could say Limerick play right on that edge as well. Like Cahill Barrett was probably concussed coming off yesterday and couldn't wait to get back on the pitch. And just something on that as well, I said it to you off air, I thought it was kind of funny in the Shemazel after, I don't know what happened after, but that Cahill Barrett and Aaron Gillan, 2 of the most combative players in the game, were 2 players going in trying to stop the row, which is not something you'd normally see. But I thought Barrett was brilliant while he was on the pitch. I thought it was strange that Flanagan was taken off nearly immediately after Barrett went off, because like he surely would have got a bit more space without Barrett in his togs, basically. So I thought that was interesting as well. I probably would have left him on another couple of minutes just to see whether he could make an impact without Barrett hanging over him.
What did you make of that, Leo?
Just generally though, Shane, just one thing that you can talk about. I just think that the referee yesterday had a good game. In fairness to Sean, I thought he did a very, very good game. I don't think any of the lads yesterday, I just thought both teams went out and really wanted to hurl. I don't think there was any nastiness. I think certainly like Cahill Barrett's situation, I think where Cahill, it was head to shoulder rather than shoulder to head yesterday. And Cahill was putting down the head, trying to get out. And it hopped off of Tom Morrissey. I think Tom Morrissey's shoulder. I don't think there was any malice in it. I think he probably will have suffered a little bit of concussion and certainly looked like it. But it's just the whole situation. I just think that like when you have a referee not noticeable on the field, which he wasn't yesterday, right? Okay, referees, they're doing a job too. Players get it wrong in the field too. Referees are always going to get one or two calls. But I just thought the referee did a very, very good job in it yesterday. Overall, the consistency, the whole thing. And this is what, getting back to the point then, I don't think any player goes out and does something maliciously, right? I just think that they know there's too much at stake, for players to be picking up yellow cards, red cards. I don't think that happens. I just think that the way the game is being refereed now, I think there's a lot of rules and regulations and a lot of directives coming to these referees' meetings. And I think the referees have literally, if they're not refereeing the game to the directives they're getting down from Croke Park, I don't think they're getting the big games. So there's a certain pressure on referees as well to referee the game a certain way. It's the intensity, it's the combat of it, the tackles, the hits. And the GA has gone to a certain level in a different way, Michael. And it's just the players are training. They're literally professionals. Like we're above an Offaly, we're trying to get these guys bigger and stronger so that when they step up to senior level, that they're able to play at that level. And it's certainly one of those situations where both teams, very, very strong, big, strong physical teams. The tackles are going in. As I said, there's no malice attached to it. It's just the situations, because the speed of the game is gone to, that these things are happening. And like Kyle Barrett, I don't think for 1 minute yesterday, right? You're underneath a high ball. There's a fella backing in you. And he might have touched the face guard. Did he do it designedly? No. Not in any circumstances. I just think that it's one of the situations where hurling is unique in that when you get into one guy's reversing in, another guy's trying to hold his ground. He's trying to grapple. He doesn't want the ball to go behind him because he knows there's threat of your man spinning him. And it's just a case of break the ball back out in front and I'll try and get out. And I think yesterday was the perfect example of it. One flag coming back, another flag going forward. And he's trying to hold his space, puts his hands up, trying to block a ball out, and it makes contact with a face guard. Not for 1 minute was that a red card yesterday. And I just think people got to realise this, and I think it actually happens in half a second or a second. And it is the nature of the game that we're playing.
I thought Sean Stack had a good game because I was looking at the commentary yesterday evening and I think hearing a lot of tip people going mad. Now there was Richie English definitely hit that ball off his knee, and I think Cattle lost the rag over that. It clearly went out off his knee for a sideline ball, but it probably levelled off with that last free. I actually thought Sean Stack had a good game, and I didn't think he was that visible either, I have to say as well. But I think it's kind of unique to watch the game back a couple hours after because you see everything that's out there, and then you kind of can make up your own mind. And even though my mind would have been clouded with various things that you're seeing, I actually thought he had a good game, and I didn't think Barrett deserved a red either.